A mental sign of vitamin D deficiency. Over 1 billion people worldwide have a vitamin D deficiency. Difficulties with memory and learning are signs of vitamin D deficiency, research finds. Vitamin D deficiency is even linked to disorders such as depression and schizophrenia. Deficiency in the vitamin affects critical structures in the hippocampus, an area of the brain important in memory and learning. 99% of people in the UAE are said to have vitamin D deficiency. I think 86% in Saudi Arabia. But in general, in the Middle East, there's a severe vitamin D deficiency. Most vitamin D is absorbed via the sun, which is ironic, being that a lot of these countries are in the desert. But many people who are in the desert tend to, number one, avoid the sun, or number two, have darker skin or melatonin, which reduces the amount of vitamin D that's absorbed. Here in the U.S., anyone who has darker skin tends to avoid the sun like the plague. We're always looking for shade, but in actuality, we need to be in the sun twice as long as people who are more fair-skinned. This could be the prevalence of prostate cancer among Black Americans and various other cancer disease, like colon cancer, for example. A lot of these are more likely to happen when you have a vitamin D deficiency. Also, lower counts of testosterone account for a lower vitamin D, but for the most part, vitamin D deficiency is very much linked to depression. That's why certain areas that don't have sun very often tend to recommend that people who live there take vitamin D supplements. It's good to take vitamin D supplements anyway. Of course, it's super important to get a blood test to see where your vitamin D levels lie. We'll see what ranges they recommend here if they mention it. But yeah, vitamin D is super important for the immune system, for brain function, mental health, you name it. These deficiencies affect critical structures. Important in memory and learning. Dr. Thomas Burns' study co-author said, over 1 billion people worldwide are affected by vitamin D deficiency, and there is a well-established link between vitamin D deficiency and impaired cognition. Fortunately, exactly how much vitamin D influences brain structure and function is not well understood, so it has remained unclear why deficiency causes problems. The main function of vitamin D, first of all, it's not really a vitamin, it's a hormone, but we call it vitamin D. It's a fat-soluble hormone that's extremely important, and one of its biggest functions is the immune system. So here they're focusing on memory and everything. And so we think, as Muslims, well, we memorize Quran. We do well in school. We do good in academia. But it's much more than that. It can affect usually the immune system and protects us from type 2 diabetes, all these types of things. So there's much more to it than just brain structure. And we do know how much vitamin D is sufficient or recommended. Of course, it all depends on how deficient a person is. But for maintenance, there's a certain number of international units that we should have daily, which we'll see if they bring it up. If not, we'll talk about it. For the study, researchers removed vitamin D from the diets of mice for 20 weeks. The mice clearly showed problems with learning and memory compared to a control group who were fed sufficient levels of vitamin D. The researchers found that vitamin D is important in keeping paraneural nets in the hippocampus stable. Dr. Byrne explained, these nets form a strong supportive mesh around certain neurons, and in doing so, they stabilize the contacts these cells make with other neurons. As neurons in the hippocampus lose their supportive paraneural nets, they have trouble maintaining connections, and this ultimately leads to a loss of cognitive function. The hippocampus is a particularly active part of the brain, which may be why it's affected by vitamin D deficiency early on, said Dr. Byrne. It's likely the canary in the coal mine. It might fail first because its high energy requirement makes it more sensitive to the depletion of essential nutrients like vitamin D. Intriguingly, the right side of the hippocampus was more affected by vitamin D deficiency than the left side. The damage to these paraneural nets may help to explain the memory problems that are symptoms of schizophrenia. Dr. Burns said the next step is to test this hypothesis on the link between vitamin D deficiency, paraneural nets, and cognition. We're also particularly excited to have discovered these nets can change in adult mice. I'm hoping that because they're dynamic, there is a chance that we can rebuild them and that we could set the stage for new treatments. The study was published in the journal Brain Structure and Function. So as this article points out, there are some mental issues that can come up when we don't have enough vitamin D. Like I mentioned, the immune system requires vitamin D. I highly recommend you get your blood test done, get your vitamin D levels checked. You want it to be above 40. A lot of people, myself included, I was around 30, in the low 30s. I think my mom's vitamin D when she was younger was in the low teens. And so you want to really make sure that you get this number up. You get more sun. You cut out sugar. Sugar downregulates vitamin D. You want to make sure you're eating beef. Beef has vitamin D. You want to make sure you supplement. And you want to supplement maintenance, about 5,000 IU a day. I know they say 2,000 or 400 is some super low number, which obviously isn't working. 5,000 IU, you can't, they say you can do too much vitamin D, but we're talking like in the hundreds of thousands. In fact, there's a famous story where a man was given a prescription for vitamin D, and after taking it for a week or two, he didn't feel too good. So he went into his doctor, and come to find out he was misreading the dosage. And so instead of taking, I think he was prescribed 100,000 IU because he had some major health issues. Instead of taking between 10,000 to 100,000 IUs, he was taking 1 million. And so he was still, just from taking 1 million IU, he just kind of didn't feel good. So no danger in doing 5,000 IU, even 10,000, depending on your situation or how low your vitamin D is, especially if you live in a region or an area that doesn't get much sunlight. You really run the risk of depression. Or if you're a sister and you don't go out in the sun, I know a lot of, the sisters wear hijab or wear niqab, but you have to find a way to get some sun. And it doesn't have to be on your whole body. You can get sun on your face. It absorbs, through your face, goes to where it needs to go. It's synthesized. But again, cut down on the sugar and the seed oils to really help the vitamin D absorb as much as possible. These things can downregulate vitamin D, interfere with its absorption into the cell. So eat real food, get sunlight, inshallah, you'll be good, and keep getting your blood tested. So hopefully this has been beneficial. Inshallah, also keep an eye on your kids' vitamin D levels. Women who are pregnant tend to have lower vitamin D. Make sure you supplement. Of course, the biggest, most famous outcome of low vitamin D is rickets. This is when the bones are not getting enough calcium, because one of the things vitamin D does is it gets the calcium out of the blood and out of the soft tissue and into bones. So even if you have some arthritis pain, a lot of it's due to low vitamin D, because you're not getting the calcium out of those into the bones. It's just settling in your joints and the soft tissue. So get your vitamin D checked, inshallah, supplement. Even if in the meantime, take 5,000 IU, 10,000 IU of a good food-based vitamin D. And inshallah, if this was beneficial, please share, subscribe, do all the things, get it out to other brothers and sisters so that we can all benefit, inshallah. May Allah reward you for being curious and keep tying your camel. Assalamu alaikum.